So will we
Sorry, will all this stuff work on this?
Oh yeah.
I think it's not too old, is it?
No.
And it's honestly any reason to tell my IT guy get me a new one.
So I gave you the one.
I humiliated myself at Portcullis House. It was okay, great. This should all work, and I've got.
Well, I've never had issues with it, as long as the internet works, but yeah, that's no problem. This is what they had here yesterday. Not like, yeah, it's just this is the equipment I've never heard of. Yeah. No, we had the handheld and stuff, and they had a black magic. So they had to have 2 minutes as well. They had a PA and a black magic.
So you just have to put the inputs and
is there any details?
There is an extra HDMI here, so that if
Yeah, thank you.
for like the I don't know if it's going to be PowerPoint presentation. You can have
Yes, we're going to do. Oh, should we do it here?
yeah, you can plug it into. So this one's going to be the one with the screen.
Yeah, and then the one for the is this where we?
That's yeah.
Sorry for this.
Yeah, it's like this way. And that's the thing, like, oh, you can't use, yeah, no, you can't use that on here, yeah. Yeah, it's true. You can't log in, yeah.
Sorry. That's a bit annoying. So is that our laptop?
It is. But then that's why they always use a separate one for streaming, so that we know that it'll work. But I thought it'd be alright once the internet's working, but clearly not. But better you find out now though. Halfway through. At least the like most important things are in launch. We take everything off as well.
Do we have a remote for the camera?
Yeah, yeah. It was on the table once upon a time. It was definitely here. Unless it's under check under the table. Unless someone's taken it next door. I'll check next door, but it was definitely in it. Unless it's on a chair or something.
Sorry.
Or on the table. It was by the windowsill.
Okay, I'll meet you when I see you. That's on you.
Yeah, you need to turn the camera on and oh, that's coming through the laptop. Go on device settings. The one that I don't even know how to use Teams myself. No, that was set to the right thing. Yeah, that was it. I think it's just the camera that's not set to the right thing. Oh, no? Let me check the camera still. This is plugged in as well. Just press that in a bit hard. Give us just a second. We're just plugging in the camera.
Sorry?
We're just trying to change the settings for the camera. Didn't want you to just be standing for so long. I'm gonna go stand by the camera.
Hey, Sue. Do you know we've got no audio going into the system at the moment? But what I can do is turn on the mic and just make sure you can hear the fire. So give me a couple of moments. It's just because well, I'm not pushing nothing to the system that's sending. Yeah, so they all charged up ready to go. So let me So is your thing just a minute ago? Was that good? Okay, so I just want you to go back in on the phone, and then I'm going to rattle through all the mic. Just make sure you can hear me nice and clear. One, two, three, four, five, six, seven, eight, nine, 10. Okay, can you hear me in the room? On the call.
Yeah, I can hear you well.
Okay. I can see you. If you want to turn your video back on, if you can hear me.
Yeah.
That's it. So we're not getting no audio from you, but I can see you're unmuted. So bear me 2 seconds. Let me just try to sort this out. So if you just wanted to do a count to 10 for me, and just keep doing that count so I can just balance your audio coming in.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 3, 4,
Yeah, if you just want to keep counting.
6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
Okay, so it sounds really quiet into the room. So
Big.
you don't need to hear anybody. Okay, yeah, that's good. Okay, so yeah. Okay, so if you wanted to join then, and I'm going to rattle through the mics, and just to make sure you can hear. Yeah, yeah. Okay, perfect. Do two. Okay, so this is the first Q&A handheld. So just give me, I'm going to turn it all the way down, and just give me an okay when you can hear it and it's nice and clear on the actual Zoom call itself. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2. Okay, perfect. That's good for us. Okay, so this should be nice and easy now. So I'm going to move on to the second handheld. One, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So this is the same setting. Same setting. Can you hear us? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Lovely. Okay, so that's handhelds are good. I'm going to move over to the lecterns now.
Sorry, so I'm there and there.
Yes. That's when someone's here.
I guess as you will be telling to the audience. It's a council attendance.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
I mean, I'm not getting that, you know.
Yeah, it's not high enough. It's the same constellation. 1, 2. Still nothing. It's not.
Let's try that one. Let's tap the mic, see if I've got it. It might just be that one.
Well, thanks. How are you?
Send it all to left and right. Yeah, try that again.
Yeah, Justin, we're definitely getting something through that. Testing, testing, 1, 2. Testing, 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 lectern mic. Testing, 1, 2. Testing, testing. 1, 2, 1, 2.
I'm just going to get to join the call. Oh yeah, if you can join the call again if that's possible. And then we got these extra glasses.
No, sorry, I can.
What time are you?
I mean, we're not going to start doing it at 11:15,
And then we can monitor from that would make sense to give them because they won't put it onto them. It would just be on. They always say that, yeah. Okay, so this is a microphone test. Can you hear me on the Zoom call loud and clear? Ah, lovely, perfect. I'm just going to go do the rest of the mics on the panel, if that's okay.
That one with the. I didn't realise you've got 2 outlets really. You've got only 1. I'm going to get tape just to this room.
So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm just going to gain these mics a bit, maybe 2 seconds.
And the teas and coffees are being served now.
Great, because we can do with staying there for a bit longer.
Yeah, each individual. So my example is in this. Testing 1, 2, testing 1, 2. Yeah.
Do you want me to speak?
Yeah. And last.
That's just a shame. Something.
We're just making sure they can hear it from us. Yeah.
Two. So on the Zoom call, we're testing the second panel in. Mike, and she's just going to give us a count back now to 10. Just make sure that you can hear. If you give us a thumbs up, we can do a test again. The thing is, because there's a lot of ambient noise in the room at the moment, I think we're finding it quite hard to actually. It's not going to be this loud when we're in show mode, so I can just push the mics. So what we might have to do is just tap the mics at the moment, just to make sure you can hear them. Yeah. Are you hearing that tapping? Oh, lovely, perfect. So we're going to tap the next mic now. So if you want to tap the one on your left, yeah, that's the one. Right, okay. Did you hear the tapping? Can you hear that tapping? It's a little bit quiet. If someone wanted to just start talking, just to count back from 10.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Can you hear that? Perfect, lovely. Okay, so the last mic now. You're not getting that at all?
Not even it. You can't even hear.
Yeah, we can't.
Fuzz.
Okay, so that is another air gap. If someone just wants to keep tapping that mic for me. Okay, so we have one issue with one mic, so bear with us 2 seconds. If you want to just stay on the call, I'll chase this cable back.
Thank you. Thank you. Then. Yeah, it's lovely. Yeah. It's so nice this time. Yeah.
You want me to say something? Is that picking up? 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Yeah. Happy days.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. That's not coming through. Ah, is Alan here?
That would be great. You can just, particularly to come towards the front of the room, that would be lovely. Wait for the last few to join us. Well, good morning and welcome. It's wonderful to see so many people join us for this ADA Network meeting in person. We really appreciate the fact that you prioritised your time to join us here today. But to make sure that we can reach as many people as possible, we are live streaming the meeting, and we're very grateful for the technical support of the House authorities to enable us to do that. We're very appreciative of that, and in fact for making this splendid venue available to us. I've met some of you, but not all of you, so it's my huge privilege to be the new chair of ADA. And I'm really pleased that I'm joined by Elizabeth Filkin this morning, who will be known to all of you as she was the inspiration for ADA. It's absolutely true that none of us would be in this room today were it not for Elizabeth, who had the idea and the tenacity to take that good idea into reality and to enable ADA to be what it is today and what it's achieved so far. So these are very big shoes for me to fill, but I know that ADA will grow from strength to strength because you got us off to such a good start. And most importantly, you're going to carry on with us on the journey, and you're going to be very much part of the team. So thank you very much, Elizabeth, for everything that you have done and everything that you are going to continue to do. And it also gives me great pleasure to welcome our Chief Executive Officer, Susan, who I'm going to pass over to in a moment. Now, Susan has been a passionate and dedicated supporter of ADA really for a very long time now, so brings a huge amount of experience into that role. So without any further ado, I am going to pass over to Susan to introduce the event and get things rolling. So thank you.
Hello, everyone. Thank you very much, Sarah. It's super exciting to be here in the warmth, in a room with people in 3D, and also knowing that there are others joining us online. So I'm Susan. This is my first week. I've had a very exciting first week. but I have known this organisation for a long time. I was previously at the law firm Hogan Lovells, and that's where we introduced our domestic abuse policy and had huge amounts of support from Ada in doing so. So when I decided that after 30 years at a law firm, it was time for me to do something else, I was really thrilled to be invited to take on this role and to build on the work of Elizabeth and many others going forwards. We're a very small team, perfectly formed. We have Catherine Bouglas, who's at the back. She's waving at you all. And also Aisha Fordham will be known to many of you as looking after our members. Aisha did a lot of work to put today together and then very sensibly has gone on holiday. So thank you, Aisha. We have nearly 1,200 businesses that are members of this organisation, which is extraordinary. And their employees constitute almost a quarter of the UK's employees, so a huge amount of reach. We also have Beacon members. We now have 14 Beacon members, and those are organisations who want to get more involved and to help shine a spotlight on the work that we're doing and to share even more broadly. We have space for a few more beacons, not many. So if you would like your organisation to be a beacon, do come and talk to me about that. I'm delighted that we've got recently 3 new beacons. We have Amy, we have Amazon, and most recently UK Power Networks. And UK Power Networks is very exciting, nothing to do with me, but my sister happens to work there. And so I was really thrilled when they joined us too. So it gives me huge pleasure to be here today and to have this important subject. We've got an amazing group of speakers to talk to us. So what we're going to do is invite 3 speakers, and then we're going to have a panel, which Sarah is going to chair for us. And then later on in the programme, as you can see, we will have Patrick Ryan, who's the CEO of Hestia, doing the Everyone's Business Awards, and then we'll close, and there'll be a little bit of time at the end for those of you who are in the room to stay and have a chat with each other. So our subject today, understanding and responding to coercive and controlling behaviour. We have 3 speakers, and I'm going to ask Emily if she would mind, and you either can speak from there, Emily, if you prefer to come up here, whatever makes you more comfortable. But Emily is going to talk to us first off. She's the Chief of Staff to the Domestic Abuse Commissioner, and it's a huge privilege to have you here. So Emily, over to you.
Thank you. I'll just stay here, I think, you know, rather than disrupting things by going up, but too much choice is very difficult. So lovely to be here, and thank you so much for the introduction. My name is Emily Fay, and I'm the Chief of Staff in the Domestic Abuse Commissioner's Office. So before I start, I suppose I'll just explain a little bit about the Domestic Abuse Commissioner. The Domestic Abuse Commissioner, Nicole Jacobs, was appointed in 2019, just before the pandemic, and the role was created as part of the Domestic Abuse Act. So we're independent of government, we're funded by government, and we have some statutory powers, but we are independent of the government. And one of the things that our role is to do is to raise awareness of domestic abuse, to improve the response to domestic abuse across England and Wales, and to hold both the local and national government to account in their role in response to domestic abuse. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the controlling coercive behaviour offence, but from the perspective of someone slightly separate from government rather than kind of on behalf of government. I'm going to slightly embarrass the Home Office officials who I recognise are sitting over there. So if anyone wants to talk to them afterwards, that's where they are. I'd also like to say, you know, it's just wonderful to be here. In the Domestic Abuse Commissioner's Office, we are really strong proponents of the coordinated community response, which is essentially about acknowledging that everyone has a role to play in the response to domestic abuse, and that includes employers. And it's great to be here amongst kind of such wonderful speakers, but also amongst all of you who really kind of care about this issue and recognise the role that employers have. So I'll start off then by saying kind of what is controlling coercive behaviour. So essentially it's a pattern of behaviour designed to control somebody, limiting what they can do or making them do things that they don't want to do, put very, very simply. It can involve lots and lots of different types of behaviour. So it can involve isolating someone from sources of support like friends, family or work colleagues. It could involve physical violence, sexual violence or threats. But it doesn't always, and that's something that's really, really important to always remember, that often it may exist without actually physical violence, which might be more easy to identify, for example. It could involve controlling daily activities, such as what someone eats, what someone wears, or when or where they sleep. It could involve using drugs or alcohol to try and control someone, or it could involve stopping someone from accessing healthcare or social care. Financial abuse can also be a significant feature, such as taking someone's money or controlling or disrupting someone's ability to work or to earn money. Another element as well is about using things like immigration status to control somebody. So whether that is saying, you're reliant on, for example, my work visa, and if you leave me, then you'll be deported. Or alternatively, saying that someone, say, hasn't got status or is undocumented, and therefore, if you go to the police, then you'll just be sent to immigration enforcement. Equally, things like using family court can be a mechanism for controlling coercive behaviour, such as kind of returning to family court, making kind of false allegations, for example, or sort of consistently going back and using that mechanism to maintain control. This is not an exhaustive list, but this is just a sort of a sense of the sorts of behaviour. And actually something that we've been talking about already is that those individual acts may not seem enormous, but it's about the build-up, and it's about the way that the totality of that behaviour can be used to completely control, coerce, and sort of terrify somebody. So what's changed since 2015? So 2015 was when the controlling coercive behaviour offence was brought in, and that was a hugely significant piece of legislation. It was really significant in terms of it was one of the first, if not the first, country in the world to introduce this specific offence, and it really validated actually how harmful this crime is. And it's something where kind of traditional notions of what domestic abuse or domestic violence is was often so focused on physical violence, but actually so often it's the controlling coercive behaviour that can be even more harmful and has that really, really long-lasting effect. So it was really important to have that put down in legislation and be really clear that this is a crime. It also helped to raise awareness of this as an issue by having it on the statute books, by saying this is a criminal offence. It demonstrates. It demonstrates that this is something that is really significant, that it is wrong, and also says to people who are experiencing controlling coercive behaviour that actually, no, you are validated, you are right, this is wrong. Particularly as controlling coercive behaviour can be so hidden. It's not something that might show, bruises or hospital admissions, but actually it is something that we need to be really, really focused on. We've seen a steady increase in convictions for the offence, but actually it is something where we don't have kind of year-on-year information. So that's something we'd really like to see, particularly from Crown Prosecution Service, is to understand every year how many convictions are we getting for this, so we can really keep an eye on it. And then also something to talk about is the kind of the big change that happened through the Domestic Abuse Act last year. So we're really pleased that there was an amendment that was made to the controlling coercive behaviour offence, which means that it extends to post-separation. So before now, unless someone was still living with their abuser, once the relationship was ended and they didn't live together anymore, then controlling coercive behaviour couldn't be used as a criminal offence. That has now changed. So that's really, really important. And the Domestic Abuse Commissioner was a big proponent of that through the same act that brought us into effect, and that Sarah Newton first started as a safeguarding minister. So we were really, really pleased to see that for a couple of reasons. One is about economic and financial abuse. Previously, police might try and use stalking and harassment offences to try and look at kind of post-separation controlling behaviour, but that didn't really work for economic or financial abuse, and particularly also abuse through the family court. So there's a lot to celebrate. There's a lot to really kind of be very positive about, but this is the part where I say, but there's more to do. It is still so often something that is misunderstood, that is misidentified by professionals as much as by the general public. It's something where, because there is that issue of an individual incident may not seem to the outsider to be significant, that can be very, very difficult then for professionals to identify. Equally, abusers are often very charming, very manipulative, and just as they are able to control their victim, they can also control professionals and others around them, turning family and friends potentially against the person that they're abusing, or kind of saying to professionals, oh, there's something wrong with this person, and actually, they really need to, they don't know what they're saying, or whatever it is. It's often not investigated by the police if there's, say, other types of violence, for example, being perpetrated, because it's much more difficult to investigate. It can be more difficult to evidence, whereas, photographs of physical injuries, for example, can be easier potentially for the police to try and investigate. And so we often don't see that happening. It's also really important to understand the difference between controlling coercive behaviour and stalking and harassment. And what we don't want to do is see those sort of merged together. Actually, if someone is perpetrating controlling coercive behaviour post-separation and stalking and harassment, they should be charged with both offences. We also want to see much greater understanding of controlling coercive behaviour amongst everyone, but particularly those professionals that have the most contact with victims and survivors of domestic abuse, and particularly those institutions that potentially can actually be a mechanism for abuse. So particularly the family court. We in the Domestic Abuse Commissioner's Office hear from people about their poor experience in the family court more than any other issue. It's something where controlling coercive behaviour is often completely misunderstood, and so it's absolutely critical that particularly family court staff, family court judges, really understand controlling coercive behaviour. We also want to see training for all public services around controlling coercive behaviour. And one of the things that we've recommended recently in a recent report is that government departments should do almost a sort of needs assessment of public services and understand how much contact does this public service have with victims and survivors, what is their role in responding, and what are the needs in terms of understanding. And just by identifying that gap, we can try and fill it. And then finally, just in terms of controlling coercive behaviour specifically and the offence and the changes to the offence, there is some statutory guidance which has just been consulted on, which we responded to, and we're hoping that the kind of final version should be published sort of early next year. But one of the things we really want to see is a requirement that all police, where there's an allegation of domestic abuse, where there's a report of domestic abuse, that they would investigate controlling coercive behaviour by default, rather than making a decision about, oh, well, we've had this, report of an assault, and then decide whether or not do we think that should be a kind of default response. So I will leave things there, but thank you very much.
Brilliant, thanks, Emily. And when we come on to the panel, there'll be a chance to explore some of that in a little bit more detail. That's really got us off to a great start. Thank you. Next, we're going to move on to Lorna Gavin. So Lorna is the Head of Diversity, Inclusion and Corporate Responsibility at Gowling WRG, and she is going to share a story of the firm story and a case study about coercive control, and take a deeper dive into actually some examples of what can happen. Thanks, Lorna. Are you happy to stay? Do you want to come here? Absolutely. I'll have a good lecture. You are a lecture.
Hi, everybody. Listen, thank you so much for having me here. I always do get so much out of these EDIV events. So yeah, I'm glad to be able to share the work that we are doing. So what I want to do is to share a bit of the work that our firm has done. I'm not going to dwell too long on that, because I think many of you will have
trodden similar paths, but hopefully it'll be useful for some people. And then I'll tell you a bit about my story, and again, how my employer helped me, and hopefully that will be of use to people. So to begin at the beginning, we used to see domestic abuse really as a community issue. We saw it through the lens of supporting women's refuges and so on. Hadn't really occurred to us that it could be happening to people in our firm. But in 2010, we heard that statistic: 1 in 4 women, 1 in 6 men would experience domestic abuse at some stage in their lifetimes. Did the maths, light bulb moment. At that stage, we had pretty much exactly 1,000 people in our firm. We had to have people at that time who were experiencing domestic abuse. We also had to have perpetrators in our firm as well. So once we knew it was happening to our people, as a responsible employer, doing nothing wasn't an option. So we had to act. So what did we do? So the first thing I did was speak to my boss, Quentin. This is Quentin. He's our senior partner. This is actually a picture from our recruitment brochure. It's him with cups of tea. That just sums Quentin up. He was a senior partner in the firm, but he'd always make a cup of tea for anybody. That's the man. And I'll come back to him. But once he heard the statistic, again, he said, crack on, we've got to do something. So what did we do? We got our people trained up. It was our HR team, our security team, reception teams, our practice operation managers. Every legal group had one. They're a bit like Auntie. If you were struggling with something, you'd go to your POM, and we trained them up because they're really well placed to spot the signs that someone might be struggling. And they had those positions of trust. People felt safe talking to them. So we got them trained up too. Train them on what DV is, the different types, how to spot the signs, how to support people. We put material on our intranet. We took expert advice from charities to help us make sure that we're saying the right things in the right way. A little knowledge is a dangerous thing when it comes to domestic abuse. And we made sure the information was fully inclusive. So we talked about domestic abuse in LGBT relationships. We talked about FGM. We talked about so-called honour-based violence. There was also a section in there that would talk to anyone in our firm that might be a perpetrator. We wanted to get them help to stop. And we had a page that signposted to multiple links to different charities and resources that our people could use, recognising that work could be a safer place to get that help. And then finally, launched by Quentin, we put posters up in the loos, and then we kind of waited to see what would happen. And what did happen? Well, here's actually one of the posters, I think coming up, an example of a poster. Those posters have, over the last 10, 12 years, they come and go, they cycled with other posters, but they all have this common theme, that the strapline is always help is closer than you think. They feature case studies, real case studies, covering everything from coercive control to economic abuse through to rape. Those posters aren't there all the time. They're currently back up at the moment in the run up to Christmas. And of course, we have the double whammy of the World Cup coming up. So we put the posters up, and then what happened? Well, firstly, those intranet pages, they got an awful lot of hits. In the first year, about a third of our firm looked at the pages. And what we found was that the page with the link to the charities, that got the single most hits, and people were staying a long time on that page. They were using that page. And every month in that first year, between 25 and 30 new users were coming to those pages. So we knew that people were accessing help. Disclosing what they were going through, and it was everyone and anyone in the firm, ranging from a partner through to someone working as a kitchen assistant. And the common theme behind what they all said was, I didn't realise that what was happening to me wasn't normal until I saw the posters. So the power of those posters can't be overstated. And we helped them, everything from literally just being a shoulder to cry on, some to listen, through to attending court with them, give them time off for court proceedings, give them time off for safety planning, for counselling, and on occasion calling the police. This time last year, almost to the day, a number of us were on, it was a cold day like today, on the phone at 5 a.m. And it was my call to call the police. We had a colleague who had her ex-partner had attempted to strangle her, and she did not want to call the police, so we intervened, and we did. She is still in danger, I'm sad to say, because that is a very long-term sticky situation, but we're there to help do what we can. But we work in collaboration with the police, with Women's Aid, with all the charities. And now we have a team of domestic violence champions, and again, we talk about domestic abuse. In the same way we have mental health champions, we have to talk about it to create that culture where it's okay to talk about it and get help. So that's the firm's journey. Now to tell you my story. when I first started work on our domestic abuse programme, I have to say there were probably, I remember there being a couple of sort of very faint alarm bells ringing in the back of my head when I was hearing some of the experiences and the behaviours and thinking, oh, that, you know, sounds a little bit familiar to what I was going through at home. But I really didn't think there was anything, there was nothing I could put my finger on. There was no single act or incident where I could say, I'm in danger, this is an abusive relationship. And perhaps now's a good time to look at this definition. This is from the Women's Aid website. It was description rather than definition. Coercive control creates invisible chains and a sense of fear that pervades all elements of a victim's life. It deprives them of their liberties and reduces their ability for action. I think that's a really powerful description. And looking back with hindsight, that was me. I was in those invisible chains, but I didn't recognise it back then. I've been with my partner for more than 10 years. We've got 2 young boys. And people do ask me, when did the abuse begin? And again, I can't point to a single event or time. That's how coercive control works. And indeed, lots of other facets of domestic abuse. It creeps up on you and it gradually escalates and escalates. But suffice to say, fast forward 2 years after we'd launched the programme, I found myself writing an email to Quentin. Here's Quentin again. Because he was my direct line manager. He was our senior partner, but he was my boss. Now, the email is lost in the archives somewhere, but I really distinctively remember the date, 4th of January, because guess what? Things had escalated over Christmas and New Year. It had become unbearable and dangerous. And I remember the first line of the email, because I remember I said, I feel like a bit of a lemon writing this to you, because I was embarrassed. I was asking for help, but I was embarrassed because I thought, you know, I'm the person leading this programme, why should I need it? But I needn't have been embarrassed. But I think it's just a symptom of the fact that how crushed I had become. I felt worthless, that I felt embarrassed by being in that situation. So I told Quentin what I was going through. And it was hard, but the best way I could describe it was to describe lots of little things, a bit like Emily has said, it's lots of little things. And I remember saying, well, this is quite a mild case, really. And even preparing for today, I do feel like a bit of a fraud because I think things that happen to me are not that serious. But I think, guess when you add them up, certainly when I cast back to 2012, I was living in terror. And there's a genuine fear the rage could build and snap and he could kill me and the boys. So there's never any physical violence, but that's how it felt. So probably the best thing I can do is to tell you some of those little stories, those little things. What was it like? That was the question that Catherine and others asked me. What was it like? So let's begin with the words, the sarcasm, the belittling, the put downs, the criticism. You know that phrase, whoever said, you know, sticks and stones can break my bones, but words can never hurt me. They have not lived through years of those words. Words are very, very powerful. Privately and in public, over time, they left me feeling worthless, wanting to apologise for everything, wanting to apologise for existing, really. And by the end, things had escalated, so those words were shouting and screaming right in my face, really, I think, objectively for no reason. But that happened in public, it also happened at home, and it happened whether the boys were there or not. I used to try to placate him and try to prevent those flare-ups. And by the end, I just sat there and took it. And he actually didn't like that when I didn't respond. He didn't like that at all. Little things. He would spend hours watching TV in the lounge. So what? No big deal. But if I entered the room to get something, he'd pause the TV. He wouldn't look at me. He'd just look at the TV that was frozen. He'd wait for me to do whatever I needed to do, to grab that book or whatever. And once I left the room, he'd put the TV back on, not acknowledging me at all. But it was absolutely chilling. I just felt that I wasn't allowed to be there. I knew I was in trouble. I was left feeling I wasn't allowed to be there. Again, a little thing, but it just happened all the time. There were lots of other things I wasn't allowed to do, this control. If I was in the kitchen waiting for a pan of potatoes to boil, or I was just trying to just get through the day, a bit stressed, I'd just play a patience game on my iPad. Woe betide me if he found me playing my iPad, because that suggested I wasn't busy. I should have been busy. I wasn't allowed to have time to myself to relax. If he caught me doing that, the sarcastic comments I got, the silent treatment, that sense of disapproval, it was horrid. So I learned, I just put the iPad away. I had to pretend I wasn't doing anything on it. Playing on my iPad was a no-no. If I wanted to play music or dance in my kitchen, I'm sorry, but kitchens are made for dancing in, right? there'll be consequences, especially when you've got little people, you want to dance with them. I couldn't do that. And I was sharing with Emily earlier, I wasn't allowed to cook fish because apparently that left a smell, and it would leave me with days of unbearable silent treatment and more treading on eggshells. So for years I didn't cook fish. Woe betide me if dinner was late. I know you can joke about, you know, dinner not being on the table on time, but he would press and press and press for dinner to be made quickly once I'd got home from work. But then when it was ready, I'd go back into the lounge and he would pretend to have fallen asleep. And I'd have to try and wake him. And he'd eventually wake up, and a bit like he would stare at the TV, just staring at space, not staring at me, he would stare at the roof when he'd woken up. And then he'd just quietly tell me it was too late. He wasn't hungry now, and he'd go to bed. And I'd be looking at the table with 2 dinners and eat on my own. A big facet of control is that the perpetrator will try and stop the victim from working. I was in this quite high-powered job. I was successful, but I got all sorts of pressure and criticism related to my work. Whereas previously, when we were, you know, it was new and we were, you know, I was up and coming, he was so proud of me. Now, just everything was just belittling about the work that I did. And if one of the boys played up, well, that wouldn't be happening if you were at work. If you weren't at work, you wanted to be here. He wanted me to be at home. He wanted me to stop work. If I was late home from work, even though I had told him in advance, I have to tell him exactly where I was going to be. He would put my eldest son on the phone and have him ask when was I coming home? Why was I late? Why wasn't I there? That sort of thing. I was isolated from my friends. Whenever people came to the house, he would just play up so much. It was just excruciating for them and for me. And people just stopped coming to the house. We stopped being invited anywhere. If I wanted to go out socially on my own, it just wasn't worth the grief in the end. So I stopped going out completely, other than my saviours were my baby group mums. So I would go and see them. But I knew every time I did go out with them, for a couple of days beforehand, I would get the moodiness, the aggro, the sort of neglect of the boys. So I was thinking, okay, is he actually going to put them to bed? Is he going to feed them while I'm out? And then when I did go out, when I returned, what would happen? He'd lock me out of the house. So I remember countless times being dropped off, and I'd have to pretend I'd forgotten my key or something. I was waving my friends away, desperately trying to make them drive away so they wouldn't see me turning the key and not being able to get in. And I would have to ring the doorbell, which of course would wake up the boys, and he would not answer the doorbell or the phone. And yeah, just the aggro and the agony of being locked out of the house when I did go out. I was being punished for going out, basically. And then in the later stages, things just became a lot noisier and scarier. Things started to get physical. I was never attacked physically. Again, back to Emily's point, there was never any physical violence towards me or the boys. There was the unspoken threat of it, though. Objects were being thrown, things were being dropped and smashed and broken, and doors were being slammed in my face if I was trying to get into the room, or more often when I was trying to get the boys out of a room, the door, he would run up and slam the door behind us. And we'd wince like that. And it was the boys. That was when I knew things had to change. I had to get him out of the house if I could. The boys were really little, but they would hear the shouting and the screaming. They'd come downstairs, and bless them, they would try to protect me to try and make things better. But it was when I saw time after time the look of fear in their faces, I knew I had to act. So that's when I wrote that email to Quentin, and we started to plan. So what help did I get? First thing, I got time off for counselling. I needed time to build my resilience, to understand what was happening, to have someone validate that I wasn't going mad, and to stop blaming myself, and to prepare for what was to come. So I got time off for counselling, because again, I felt worthless, I felt guilty having time out. They gave me all the time I needed. They gave me a dedicated contact in HR, and this manager, he and Quentin both made it very clear I could call them anytime. They gave me their personal numbers 24/7. I'm not saying you have to do that, but for me, just knowing that helped enormously. The support was just there, and I could phone them and just sob down the phone if I needed to. They just gave me time to prepare for my exit, time to talk to the school, to do all the safety planning that I needed to do. They gave me time to do safety planning with the police. I contacted the City of London Police, where my office is based. I couldn't go to my local Home Force because he would track all my movements. So with the advice from charities that I was working with in my day job, I knew what to do. City of London Police did the safety planning with me. They did the assessment. And then when it came time for me to make the exit, they contacted my local force, my Home Force Thames Valley, and they put a flag on my property. So if I did call 999, they knew what to do. And I actually spoke to the officer. He called me the day before the exit, and he said it was the best planned exit he'd ever seen. And that was down to the help that my employer had given me. We together had thought of everything. And crucially, during this period and afterwards, again, back to your point, Emily, about that shadow, Quentin, my boss, gave me time not to perform at work. He gave me time to be a bit rubbish because, frankly, there were days when all I could do was just focus on breathing and getting through 1 minute at a time. Just to give you an insight into what that best prepared exit looks like, here is a list. This was, it's still in my drafts box in my email folder to this day. This was a list of what I'd need to take with me if I had to go in a hurry, if my partner wouldn't agree to leave. I had it all prepared. And, you know, my boys were little, as Thomas books and nappies and tippy cups and teddies. They're the most important thing. I didn't need that, thank goodness, because he did leave peacefully. There's a whole lot more that happened, but on the day he left peacefully. But then the journey to recovery began. So what I want to talk about is really just and I could spend an hour just talking about how I rebuilt me, or as my best friend from that baby group described, how I became unsquashed. I think things I'd want you to think about if you're supporting a colleague who's experienced coercive control is to think about things like this. And firstly, yeah, the shadow left by coercive control is a really, really long one. It's taken me years, and I'll say it's still a work in progress. I haven't used the word trauma so far, I don't think, but this is trauma. My counsellor at the time, she described the situation I was living in. I used to tell her how terrified I was when I put the key in the front door when I came home from work or from getting my hair cut or whatever. And she said, every time you're putting that key in the door, you're going through a car crash because your brain is going into survival mode, because I didn't know what was going to be happening on the other side of the door. So yes, it left me with PTSD. A mild case, I think, but nonetheless, I can joke about it now, but I will say to colleagues, you know, I'm fine, but just don't slam doors around me. We're in open plans without any doors. But sometimes things do happen that are triggering. And when that happens, my brain does freeze and my short-term memory goes. I'm just cotton wool. I guess I go into fright mode and that lizard survival brain kicks in. So I've learned to recognise it in the work context. It's so important, again, to talk about it. So I'll just tell my team, I'll say, look, I've been triggered. So that stuff we've been through in the meeting today, you're going to have to tell it to me again tomorrow, I'm afraid. And they're fine with that. And we work. I've had quite a lot of counselling over the years, and that's been a huge help, as have my boys. They've needed a lot of support. And my heart breaks for anyone that can't get access to that help. So as employers, I would say do everything you can to make counselling available to your colleagues through your EAPs as well. Make sure your EAP has the right specialist support. Not every EAP does. And all the way through this, my employer, my wonderful, wonderful employer, was patient and supportive, and they gave me time and space to recover. So a couple of months after my partner had left, I knew he was coming back the next day to see my boys for the first time. And I was having my appraisal with Quentin. Here comes Quentin again. And I apologised for what I felt was my poor performance over the last year. And I used the words, I'm trying not to beat myself up about this. And Quentin stopped me and he told me not to apologise. And he knew I'd never been physically beaten up. But he said, if you're beating yourself up over your performance, then you've been beaten up twice over. And that understanding and support, that said everything to me. He was an employer that got it. And that was exactly what I needed in those early days, understanding. And that has carried on ever since. I think I'm out of time, so I'll just finish with I guess my key messages to employers when it comes to coercive control and abuse more generally. Look out for the signs, but as you've heard the things I describe, you've got to be prepared for them to be really well hidden. It is really, really hard to spot them. People who are in abusive relationships out of necessity become really strong and really resilient, and we're really good at hiding stuff. And we don't necessarily have any bruises to show for it. So build that relationship of trust where people can open up and tell you. Give the support, but understand that need for support may carry on for months and years. And create a culture where it is okay to talk about domestic abuse, because just by doing that, you're giving people permission. They do need permission to talk about it, and they will, and that will save lives. I guess one final postscript from me. 10 years on from that, I'm feeling like a lemon email. Quentin's retired, but the work still carries on. And now it's with me and other people helping colleagues who are in that situation. That work continues. My boys and I were happy. We're safe. I have a wonderful new partner. He is kind. The most important thing, he's funny, he's gentle, he's a brilliant role model for my boys. My boys adore him, so do I. And we all can dance in the kitchen, and I can eat fish.
Gosh, thank you very much, Lorna, for sharing your story. And also, I mean, yeah, thank you. But also for explaining in detail how employers can best support and help. That really practical guidance, I think, is immensely helpful to all of us in the room. So next up, we also thought it would be useful to understand how coercive control can impact people differently from different communities and backgrounds. And it gives me huge pleasure to welcome Lioness Tamar, who's the founder of the Lioness Circle, who is going to be our next speaker. Do you want to come up here? Great, thank you. Wow, how powerful, how powerful. And thank you as well for sharing your story, Lorna. From all different perspectives and angles, we really do appreciate it. Thank you. Okay, so I'm going to speak about, so if we can just go back on the intro page. Yes, I'm going to speak about coercive control from the African and Caribbean community viewpoint. But just before I do, I call myself Lioness Tamar, and that's because of my own lived experience as well, coming from being a childhood survivor of actually rape and sexual offences to experiencing abuse right throughout my teens and adult life as well, until I actually got the support I needed, turned my life around. Not only do I have a law degree with a financial career that I was building, but I kind of packed it all in to focus on this exact kind of work that, as to the reason why we're here today. I've co-founded my own organisation, and I don't know, has anyone seen this flyer before? Okay, if you haven't, just thought I would, well, now you have. So this is the Lioness Circle, and basically it's a specialist support service for women and girls who's experienced domestic abuse and sexual violence, particularly from the African and Caribbean heritage. And yeah, we do quite a lot of work there, from peer-to-peer support, hand-holding, advocating on their behalf, one-to-one mentoring, workshops, etc. I've written my own book as well, so if you wanted to know more about how I got from where I was to where I am, then please grab a copy from Amazon. Yes, I work with Safe Lives as a national trainer, training the Met Police and other officers on domestic abuse. So City Police was one of the forces that I helped to train as well. And we've been addressing the courts as well, the court system, maybe not judges, but other in the courts, because it's a movement, right? And we all play a part in that. And of course, I work with the Met directly around community inclusion. As you may recognize, I wear multiple hats, but for the purpose of today, I'll move on. So yes, we can move on to the next one. Move on to the next one. Okay, so who's heard of the term intersectionality? Just by a show of hands. Okay, phew. Okay, so you are aware that intersectionality is about the different layers, the additional layers of disadvantage that we face, particularly when we experience, you know, unfairness like abuse and other types of inequalities that we may experience. So the different levels of disadvantage. So Lorna was very, very articulate in how she expressed her experience, and I still can't imagine from your perspective, but if you try to think of it then, that imagine somebody going through the abuse, they are also being impacted by a lack of education, or they have ethnicity, language is a barrier. They are physically disabled. They may be relying on their, you know, the main perpetrator is their carer. Basically, like it becomes so much more complex for the person you're looking at who is a victim of the abuse. And yeah, just there's so many different layers as to how they would then experience the abuse and how they would access the support that's available to them. So yeah, intersectionality, race, culture, ethnicity then plays a big part in how some groups of survivors experience abuse. So moving on to the next one. So as you know, we know I'm here today to speak about this from the Black women perspective. And basically, within the Black community, victims basically experience abuse, coercive control in with many of the similar patterns as we know coercive control to be, you know, from the grooming stage, the isolation, the managing the situation, the, you know, denying and blaming and feeling delusional, you know, the tactics that perpetrators use to manipulate them and to manipulate others around them. You know, we see a similar pattern, but what we also see is the impact that culture and the history of the race of that group of people, how it compounds the experience that victims are experiencing. So we know that Black women are more likely to be abused by somebody they know. Now, within the Black community, we kind of stay within our community. We police ourselves, and that's because of a number of reasons. And partly it's due to, you know, the legacy of slavery and the ongoing oppression that results from it, you know. And so that's just some of the reasons. But for a number of reasons, we kind of stay within our community. And so we are more likely to experience the abuse by somebody that we know, and we're more likely to experience it over a longer period of time. You know, this community has experienced a lot of abuse and end up normalizing it and kind of just get on with it, basically. We also know that Black women are 14% less likely to be offered specialist support, and that's even by a research by Refuge themselves. So even after we overcome the barriers and actually speak out to get some support, we're not being offered specialist support, which basically kind of reinforced why they then, you know, don't speak out later on. And they're more likely to die at the hands of their abuser as well. Domestic homicide, I've seen the latest figure for the domestic homicide review. And yes, Black and racially minoritized women are literally at the top of that. Moving on to the next slide. So these are some of the cultural barriers to why the Black community, particularly Black women, don't speak out. So, you know, it goes from the knowledge of what actually abuse is. Like within the professional circle, we use these terminologies, but sometimes the community don't actually relate to what that is. So what is domestic abuse? So not having the knowledge and understanding of what it is. And,
even when they do kind of feel like, yeah, this really doesn't feel right, they may not have the language as a result to articulate and express themselves. And especially when they are born outside the country as well, it's a whole new system getting to know the language and the way to navigate the system here. I can tell you, I wasn't born in this country. And fear and trust as well. So fear of the system, again, because of much of this ongoing challenges and oppression for, for the community, basically. And then trust in terms of like not feeling represented within the different systems. Their family can also become a barrier, because again, it's the notion of Black women having to choose. So when racial issue becomes an issue, when racial challenge becomes an issue in the home, they are essentially choosing to stay on the side of their partners, like not wanting to break the trust, not wanting to break up the family, not wanting to be seen as they are the one being disloyal to the family. And so if they end up breaking up the family, they could then be disregarded by the community as a result. How dare you bring the police into our home, into our community after everything that they've done to us, kind of thing. So they end up blaming the Black woman. And so we just have to carry on like everything is fine, continue normalizing it and being silent. And of course, institutional racism plays a massive part in the disclosure cycle as well. And informal support, like we tend to turn to informal groups. We don't tend to go to authorities. When you see, especially an older Black woman go into authority, you must know she literally is on that verge of death, basically. We generally turn to informal services, but again, that kind of defeats the purpose many times, because these informal services oftentimes reinforce why they shouldn't speak up, why you shouldn't call the police, why you shouldn't break up the family home. So the cycle continues, basically. And then the next slide, sorry, I'm just rushing through, I'm mindful of the time. This final slide basically is just pointing out as employers what you can do. So for me, it's about the individual, the organization, and then the institutional. So as an individual, you have to recognize within yourself, first of all, why it's important to be aware about domestic abuse, why it's important to be aware about how domestic abuse affects different communities. You have to recognize that within yourself. You have to recognize your own biases and your own stereotypes. We all have them. What are yours? And how does that then impact your decision making? How does it impact on who you recruit? Or who you, your disciplinary process? How does it impact on who you put on teams? How does it impact on everything you do within your own role? And then once you become aware, then it's about training. Go and learn more about how this is affecting people's lives. So develop yourself and then put those changes into practice. You can start by putting them into practice in your own circles, but essentially you're looking at putting them putting them into practice into roles that you can control, what you have control over. And then you turn to the organization that you're a part of, how can you create safer spaces for more people, that now that you know how these people are being affected, that these people can have these safe spaces within the organization to have these conversations. And so you're taking the feedback from that, as well as experts as well, to kind of restructure your policies, your processes, and your people, making sure that these people are represented at all stages within the organization. And so you're then affecting changes on a meso basis. And don't just stop there. You may be doing great in your organization. You may be doing great as an individual, but the work continues, because there are other organizations that need the support, that could benefit from some of the resources that you have, that, the learnt, the lessons that you've learned. So run campaigns, on your websites, internally, try to build allies with other organizations, empower other organizations, and support specialist support organizations, particularly those smaller ones where they are actually reaching the harder to reach. I tell you what, there's no such thing as harder to reach. It's just where you're reaching. And yeah, these organizations, especially the specialist smaller organizations, are able to reach areas that many established organizations are unable to reach. And so support them, show your support. And so you're affecting change on a macro basis. And finally, it's because of this why I am basically, because of my own invested passion, my own invested experience. I've got a child as well, I'm a mother. I want to basically be able to see a better future for my son and for my sisters and other people in my community. And so, yes, I go about, I do lots of different work particularly with the police, because they are the first port of contact when somebody's in that dire need. And so I work with them at local basis. They've come to my Lioness Circle. I've gone to their Hendon Training Centre. I've gone to New Scotland Yard. I'm involved in political circles as well. Again, they're doing the training with the legal professionals, with the Met about domestic abuse. It's because of my own lived experience why this for me isn't just a talk that I'm doing. This is my life story. Thank you very much.
Very much indeed for sharing your life story and being such an inspirational speaker, along with all of our speakers this morning. I'm sure we've all been very moved and we've all learned a great deal. So thank you very much indeed. I'm delighted now that we're going to have a panel session that our speakers have very kindly agreed to answer questions. So I'm sure you've been thinking of some questions while they were speaking. But I'd also like to welcome Natalie Curtis, who's joining our panel. She's one of ADA's ambassadors. So perhaps if I could turn to you first, Natalie, and you could say a little bit about your organisation as well. I think what we really all want to know in the room is, and we've got some really good insight into this, but really, what is it that employers need to be doing to really support people, the 1 in 4, the 1 in 6, who we know will be experiencing the various forms of coercive control that we've heard about today?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm delighted to be here. It's so nice to be actually with people. It's really nice to see events coming back together. So I'm Natalie, and I'm a survivor of controlling and coercive behaviour. I shared my story 2019 in this forum, in this network. My ex-perpetrator, who was my husband at the time, was the first person in the UK to be jailed for controlling and coercive behaviour. I think he's still, in 2022, the longest serving, which was 2 years. So we know that it's not good enough. The response to controlling and coercive behaviour is not good enough. But actually, controlling and coercive behaviour sits at the heart of domestic abuse. And actually, I could be here for hours and hours and hours to talk to you about my experiences that mirrors other people's experiences. So thank you to the rest of the panel today. I was lucky. Should I use that term lucky? Probably not. But my employer was amazing. The reality is, you could save a life. By your response to disclosures in the workplace, you could save a life. Now, all victims and survivors are different. What worked for me might not necessarily work for others, but a flexible approach is really important. So we look back at the statistics in 1 in 4 women and 1 in 6 men. If I haven't got you by now, £66 billion it costs the UK economy a year. We have to do something to help victims and survivors of domestic abuse. As part of the IDA network, which Balfour Beatty are proud to be a part of, and we've done lots of amazing partnership, is to look at putting a strategy, a guidance in place. We call ours a domestic abuse guidance. Other companies call it a domestic abuse policy. It sets out exactly how we can help victims and survivors. However, not tied in and tangled. So it's not a one size fits all, if you like. So have a look at, flexibility in the workplace, where you're working, what hours, is there home working available that's safe for that victim and survivor. Please listen, believe, and signpost to the relevant specialist domestic abuse services. So if somebody was to come to you today, would you know where you're going to signpost these victims and survivors to? It could be national charities, it could be something more local. If you're not already, I'd ask employers to join the IDA network. I think when I first started, it might have been 100 employers, so it's great that we've got over 1,000. What a journey that it's been over the last couple of years. But being a member is not a ticky box exercise. We need action now from everybody. We know that the Domestic Abuse Act has come into place, and we know that it's putting duties on the employers. It's a staged response. We can't wait forever. And I'm proud to say that Balfour Beatty, we're ahead of the game here, and what we've been doing over the last few years with my allies, which hopefully are online, is something quite incredible. Once you I feel like I've got a kind of a support system that really wants to make a difference, but it's not spending thousands of pounds. It's not, spending so much money that smaller organisations can do this. It's about posters, the awareness, the campaigning that we do within the business. That is what is making a difference. And I think if I reflect on the journey of where we started with Balfour's, actually, we didn't necessarily look at perpetrators first of all, but absolutely we do now. And we signpost them to get perpetrators to stop. And actually, we've had a few people come forward within the business that are perpetrators that have said, I want help. So from where we were at the beginning of although that was great for me, we didn't have anything in place, to a journey where we're helping hundreds of victims and survivors. Balfour Beatty is happy to partnership with any other organisation, and we've worked with many, obviously through the IDA network. Embed it in your culture change. It reminds me of the journey with the mental health. We don't talk about mental health, especially in a male-dominated industry that I work in, because we're okay. It reminds me of that journey at the beginning that nobody wanted to talk about. Domestic abuse is everybody's business. And like I say, I'm really proud that myself and Balfour Beatty have joined such a powerful network, and we're making such a difference to others.
Look, thank you very much again, and I'm sure people found that really inspiring and some really good practical things for people to think about. Before I turn with questions for the panel, has anybody in the room got a question for any of our panellists or all of our panellists? Anybody like to? Yes, the lady here on the front row.
I'm not sure it's directed at yourself and a little tone, so I'm going to go with you, if that's all right. Because I think one of the things that I observe is great that we're trying to obviously help people understand and be educated on coercive control. I'm wondering really how we can support schools to see it, because obviously the children are seeing things in their home environments, and as teenagers, they can be quite impressionable, and then like coercive and then be parted from their peers and their girlfriends, their boyfriends. So I'm wondering, is there any ambition? I know you've done a lot already, and there's a long way to go, but is there anything in the plan around how do we educate and help them with their support too?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that's a really, really important point. And it's something where, so in terms of sort of school curriculum, there is now compulsory relationships and sex education, but actually that does cover domestic abuse and control and coercive behaviour. But that's quite a bit of a one size fits all, actually. And what we need to see is that in terms of raising awareness, that's really important. That's a good step forward. But we do want to see more in schools, more with young people, and more specialist support for children. Some work that we've done recently was about looking at the provision of support across England and Wales and what kind of support people were able to access, what they wanted and what they were able to get. And support for children was one of the lowest types of support that people were able to get access to. So we found that of people who wanted support for their children, 29% of people were able to get it. So the vast majority were not able to get that specialist support for their children. And it is something where it's so crucial to kind of try and support children who've experienced domestic abuse in the home, but also where potentially they may be experiencing or perpetrating, or perpetrating may be the wrong word for children, but where there are sort of harmful behaviours within their own intimate relationships, and actually recognising that that isn't right and that there's kind of harm to that and that that needs to change. And something we'd like to see in the Commissioner's Office, and we've kind of been trying to speak to people in the Department for Education, for example, in schools, is something that is a bit more than just relationships and sex education, but isn't youth offending. You know, where is actually there that kind of middle ground where you can intervene at an earlier point before, you know, an offence might have taken place, but it is more than just, we're going to teach you in school about what domestic abuse is, as important obviously as that is. I think the other thing as well is about understanding the sort of role of prevention, and the thing that's difficult with that is that proving prevention is extremely difficult, but that doesn't mean that we shouldn't be doing it. And actually we need to not just always be focusing on kind of crisis support, but working with children and young people, and children who, you know, where an adult victim is being supported, actually thinking about how can we make sure that the children are being supported as well. That was quite a roundabout way of answering your question, but I think you make a really, really important point that we need to be intervening as early as possible, and supporting children.
So thank you, Emily. I'm thinking about that last point about where an organisation, an employer, is supporting somebody who's the victim, and what more that employer might do in addition to the support that they're providing to the individual. Just I'm wondering, Lorna, based on your experience, and you talked about your sons and the support that they needed, do you think there is a role for employers to also help in the cases where there are children?
Yeah, I think it builds on everything the others have said. You know, it's that flexibility, and I think the power of an employer listening to what's happening and giving the safe space for that the colleague to tell the whole story, everything that's happening at home, and then they can meet the employer's needs. That probably your colleague who's experiencing this, they will know best what they need, and I think that the best thing the employer can do can listen to that and give them that space and the time to do it. And like you said, Natalie, it doesn't cost them money, it's just the time off. So my boys did need help. The repercussions was actually a couple of years after their dad had gone. And I now know that this is a thing, but actually they became very aggressive and violent towards me. And it's heartbreaking, because it's like, well, they've lost their dad. They think it's their fault. They think they're bad people. They shouldn't be there. So they're going to push mum away as well. Just get it over and done with. It's heartbreaking. But I was able to get, you know, I had the funding. I could pay for it privately. You know, access to play therapy and specialist counselling. And I think that the employers can't always, you know, probably the EAP programs won't necessarily. Some will be family based, so you can get support for the children. So do explore that. But again, it's just it's the time, the support. Be led by what your colleague wants, and just keeping that communications channel open, because the path out of this, it is not a linear path. It is very bumpy, very rocky, and there'll be good times, and then you think you're all square, and then something will happen, and the kids go off the rails, or you go off the rails, and you need to be flexible. Flexibility is the key, just an understanding, and be guided by what the employee needs.
That's terrific. And so I think Lioness said, and certainly we heard from Natalie, the power of employers to signpost people. And as somebody could have pointed out to you, perhaps, that expect that your children will suffer in a few years' time, and that awareness building and that signposting, if not providing the services themselves. So really good. Before I take another question, does anybody else on the panel want to comment on that, or should we move on to another question?
I thought I might just comment on the point about counselling and sort of the long-term response to domestic abuse, and something Lorna said already was about employee assistance programs and counselling. And again, I'm going to keep referring to this research that we've done recently, because it's fresh in my mind. But counselling was the type of support that victims and survivors wanted the most, and yet about 35% of people were able to get hold of it. This is for themselves, not thinking about children more broadly. But actually, a lot of employees assistance programs may have counselling, but actually it's really important that there is that specialist counselling. So I think something just to sort of really re-emphasise what Lorna was saying is that counselling is so difficult to get hold of, and employers have a critical role in terms of, you know, when they first have a disclosure, safety planning, supporting their employees in terms of time off, flexibility, understanding. But actually that longer term recovery is also a really important role for employers to play, particularly given what we know about the gaps in provision in terms of sort of statutory funding for long-term sort of therapeutic support.
Excellent point. Yes, I've seen you, and I've seen you, Elizabeth, as well. So after Leoness, would you like to come in? No, Lioness, have you?
It was just to kind of echo your point as well, because I did benefit from the EAP at my old employer. And I did get specialist therapy through my employer. Now, when you are from a poverty-driven background, sometimes this is the only way you're going to be able to access that kind of support. And so I was able to get it through Bupa, where I could choose which therapy that I wanted. I whole database of therapists. I could see their pictures, I could see what they specialize in, I could see how far away they live from me. And that was extremely helpful, that I'm choosing this person as opposed to somebody, I'm just turning up and I don't even know what the person is going to look like. And it still took a while for me to, you know, put that mask down and open up to this person. But that process was very beneficial and helped to reduce some of the boundaries.
That's a really important point, extremely powerfully made, because if employers are already paying for these schemes, as you were saying, it's not about necessary additional cost, but when they're procuring those schemes, you know, making sure it's got as rich a choice as clearly your employer had commissioned or procured from Bupa.
Yeah.
Other good providers are available.
Just on the back of that, I think one really important point to note is that when we've left the most horrendous times of experiencing domestic abuse, our journey never ends of recovery. Everyone seems to think that once you've left, it's all right. And there's, you know, must be a piece of work to do in that fact. But, you know, I'm quite a happy, jolly person, but I'm not always like that. We've got bumps along our journey. So we must remember that it's a journey. It's not a ticky box that we've left, that, you know, and we're going to be okay now.
Really good reflection to share. Thank you. Elizabeth.
Well, Sarah, you've already said what I was going to say, but what I'd like to do is underline it. Everybody from HR who happens to be here today, go into your programme that you have commissioned and make sure they've actually got specialist people who can help people facing domestic abuse. You're paying for it, get it right.
Yeah. That's a really good point, and I'm sure one of the things we're going to be doing today, and Susan will touch on this later, is to make sure we capture the learning in the room and the good examples and make that as a useful tool for people in the room, online and our wider membership, to be able to draw upon these really key points about the practical differences that employers can make. So that's a question I really wanted to have for you, Emily, that it is, you know, it's great that the legislation, there's no doubt. But what practical difference are you seeing in the Commissioner's office that's being made by employers to support our victims and perpetrators, in fact?
So I think there's definitely been, I mean, this is in very large part down to Ida, kind of a huge increase in the recognition of employers of their role of domestic abuse in responding to domestic abuse, understanding of the prevalence of domestic abuse, that, you know, almost no matter what size of organisation you have, you will be employing people who have experienced domestic abuse or are currently experiencing domestic abuse. There's also, in terms of the legislation, specifically the controlling coercive behaviour offence, that is really important in terms of recognising that particular type of abuse, that also that can kind of affect someone's life in really, really significant ways, even when the relationship has ended. And I think that's the thing from kind of our side that's so significant about the most recent Domestic Abuse Act and the extension of the control and coercive behaviour offence, because someone can say, look, I'm experiencing control and coercive behaviour. Yes, I know we separated 5 years ago, but that doesn't mean that the abuse has stopped. And being able to really say that in black and white and say it's still a crime and I'm still being subject to this makes such a big difference, and helps employers as well in terms of clarity about what they can and can't do. It's something particular, employers are primarily not the first responses to domestic abuse. They're not the police, they're not social care, and actually by having that clarity, it's so important because employers don't want to get it wrong, and that's great, but actually being able to have that really clearly set out in legislation makes a big difference.
That's really, really helpful. So
Can I just come in with a couple of tangible examples? Again, we were talking about this, just about that long shadow. So it took me years afterwards to realise that the control thing was still happening. So it was actually talking to my son's play therapist, and I described how years after my partner had left, I find it difficult whenever I opened the coat cupboard, one of his coats was still there, because he insisted that it was very unreasonable to have to go somewhere else when he flew in to the country, to have to go somewhere else to pick up his coat. So his coat had to stay in my coat cupboard. And of course, every time I looked at it, there he was through his coat. And it took my play therapist to say, get rid of the coat. And I did. But as recent as 20, and I'd say it's all about building boundaries, okay, and boundaries. But they still, and I thought I had all the boundaries in place. And long story short, I had let my ex-partner borrow my car because he still had this control over me. And in doing so, he managed to get my house key. He knew he wasn't meant to come into the house. And one morning he came into the house on a visit to this country, and I saw him come in and I just froze. And the goldfish was watching him. And what he did, he walked through the house. He walked upstairs. I had done everything I could in the house, new furniture, everything, to try and rebuild the house from the outside in to make it my space, my safe space. He walked in, walked upstairs, walked into my bathroom, opened my laundry cupboard, got a face cloth, happened to be my face cloth my friend got me for my 50th birthday, just wiped it over his face, dropped the face cloth on the floor, left the house. And I described to you, it's like a tomcat spraying, frankly. He just said, I'm here. That was only 3 years ago. Now, after that, that was the final thing, and the boundaries are now rock hard. But I am a strong person, and it's 7 years after he'd gone, he found a way to get in and just show that he wanted to be in control. It is insidious. It's really, really difficult. So just that long term. I'm so glad that legislation's changed, because they will keep going. Mm-hmm.
Well, look, I'm sure we'd all love to carry on this discussion. I mean, there's so much, passion in the room, and thank you so much for your sharing of your personal experiences, your personal journey. But we do have to bring it to a close now. So I'm sure I'm speaking on behalf of all of us, how much we've appreciated you coming along this morning, and we've all left feeling inspired and some really practical things that we can do in our organisations to make a really positive difference. So thank you all very much indeed.
Thanks very much. We're now going to move on to Patrick Bryan, who's the CEO of Hestia, with the Everyone's Business Awards. Patrick, nice to see you.
Thank you very much. Really pleased to be here, and not for the first time a little stressed, because it seems to be that I always get to follow one of the most inspirational speakers, and hearing Tamar speak without notes was really inspiring, so thank you very much. I will use notes. And a big congratulations to Ida, who continue to do such a wonderful job in convening, in raising awareness with employers about domestic abuse, and also in partnering with the many specialist agencies who are here in the room, in order to seek solutions to this epidemic that we're all facing and seeking to address. For those of you who don't know about Hestia, we have been around for about 50 years, supporting adults and children who are vulnerable or at a point of crisis in their lives. For the last 20 years, we've been supporting survivors of domestic abuse, and for the last 10 years, working with survivors of modern slavery. Last year, we supported just over 18,500 adults and children, and 20% of those were survivors of domestic abuse. However, in our work as one of the largest providers of domestic abuse refuges and support in London, we took a view about 10 years ago that we didn't just want to be there at the point of crisis, but we wanted to end domestic abuse, and we wanted to work with the wider community to understand the very vital role that they can play. And a great example of this work is our partnership with HSBC. This week, when you turn on your TV, or you walk past a bus stop, or drive past a billboard, you may well see HSBC, who have turned all of their advertising budget over to raising awareness about safe spaces and addressing financial and economic abuse. And I want to highlight our partnership with HSBC because it's long-standing, but also it helps to share or helps to highlight how a business can think holistically across the piece about the role that they might play in tackling domestic abuse. So for many years, we've been supported by HSBC staff who come to volunteer in our refuges and services. The Christmas party they throw for the mums and kids is legendary, and I do everything I can to wangle and invite to the HSBC Christmas party. But from that early experience of volunteering came conversations with the staff who work in our refuges and with survivors about the challenges they face when coming into a refuge of opening a bank account, and the difficulties and the delays and the obstacles to doing that. And from that, in partnership with HSBC, was born the idea of a survivor bank account, making it really easy for survivors to open a bank account. During the pandemic, we then launched Safe Spaces across pharmacies in the UK, and we're currently partnering with just over 6,000 pharmacies across the country. And our partnership with HSBC has allowed us to expand that offer into the retail banking space. And so you can go into any of HSBC's banks and you can ask to use a safe space. And now, as I said, they're using their not insignificant marketing budget to raise awareness about safe spaces and also the issue of financial and economic abuse. But in doing that, they have stayed true to their brand and their expertise. They are working in the area that they know really well, but then focused on working with partners like us to understand how their expertise can be leveraged. So while I'm here today to celebrate, we'll come to the award, to celebrate the work of that employers can play, I also hope that the HSBC example can serve as inspiration for what more employers can do. Clearly, there is a huge focus, rightly, on the role of employers in supporting their staff. But actually, employers can play a vital role in a community response to domestic abuse as well. And if anybody wants to do a Christmas party, they can come and talk to me about that too. The Everyone's Business Award is a benchmark for best practice in the sector. It's awarded by an independent panel of experts, both in the domestic abuse field and by employers who've previously secured the award. I want to thank our panel of experts who put a lot of work into reviewing submissions and making decisions, and in particular Paul Quinlan from EY, Jane Barr from the Collison Group, and Alessia, who is here from Hestia. All of everyone's business colleagues are here from Hestia. I'm going to ask them to give a wave so you know who they are. That's Sue, Alessia, Moya, Jazz and Lizzie. Today's award is an organisation which has demonstrated commitment over some time to this agenda. And the organisation is Morgan Sindall. They're a leading construction and regeneration company in the UK who have built a strong ethos in building sustainable environments. Morgan Sindall has a strong commitment and demonstrated their strong commitment in supporting staff who have been affected by domestic abuse. And they've worked with both IDA and Hestia's Everyone's Business team over several years. At the start of their journey, they developed a comprehensive policy to support staff, including specific guidance for managers, and were one of the leading organisations during the pandemic to support staff affected by domestic abuse. One of the standout aspects of Morgan Sindall is their comprehensive strategy around domestic abuse and a domestic abuse engagement plan, which includes having discussions at all levels of the organisation and also making sure that their domestic abuse strategy is embedded in their inclusion and diversity plan. They have invested in ensuring that HR and line managers across the business are trained to respond, to refer colleagues enduring domestic abuse, and have taken up the CPD accredited Everyone's Business training. Another point of best practice is their decision to put in place. We talked about EAP earlier, and about getting that right. What Morgan Sindall have done beyond the EAP offer is they have provided an independent domestic abuse advisor for their staff. This Everyone's Business IDVA is able to specifically support any employee within Morgan Sindall who has or is experiencing domestic abuse. And we heard the panel talk about how the long shadow that it casts. So it's not just what's happening right now, but the way in which this can impact people's lives forward, as well as providing support and training for the service. I think what this has done, having the IDVA in place, having a dedicated resource that people can go to who is very expert and where there is confidentiality, is it has better supported the organisation to feel that they will know what to do. They will know where to signpost somebody to, and that it can be done safely and well. The panel agreed that Morgan Sindall are a pioneering organisation in their overall domestic abuse response, who will continue to address how they support employees when they need support, and will continue to ensure that domestic abuse is everyone's business. And I'm really proud to present to Sarah Haywood the award on behalf of Morgan Sindall, and to wish them every success and congratulations.
I can do it. Your parents, but I can do it. Hello, my name's Sarah Hayward. I'm the Leadership and Organisational Development Manager for Morgan Sindall Infrastructure. And I just wanted to take this on behalf of the entire team that have worked on this. We've been on a journey over the last 2 years, and this isn't just one person, this is a multitude of people coming together. And I wanted to thank some of those because, you know, they're not here with me today. So right from the beginning, we had people like Carol Caulfield, Sam Hewlings, Katie Panter, Katie Smith, and then we had Charlotte Taylor and Abigail. All of those people have provided their support and stories, but most importantly, they've been an inspiration to helping people open up. And even this week, one of our members of staff
with Charlotte Taylor has recorded a video of his experiences as a child being a witness to domestic abuse in the family home, but more importantly, and so brave and courageous, how his behaviour then impacted his family, and how he decided that he needed to change that because it was impacting his wife and his daughters. And he wanted to share his story publicly, and he's recorded a video to do just that, to say that actually, to recognise that he needed to do something different. But he said he wouldn't have been able to do that 5 years ago. But now he's been able to do that because he can see that there's clearly support in place to help people. So I would say for any organisation out there, and I would certainly echo all of the panel speakers, you don't need loads of money. What you need is a great bunch of people who are passionate, who are driven, who can help bring this to life. And our emphasis is that you are not alone. So trying to help everybody feel that they've got somewhere to go to and someone to speak to is the most important thing. Thank you.
Many congratulations, and thank you, everyone. So it's my duty to bring this wonderful session to a close. I would like to thank all of you in the room for coming, and to all of you who are listening in for joining us. Everyone in this room is focused on supporting people who are victims and survivors of domestic abuse, and ultimately to try to make domestic abuse less, even make it disappear, stop. Our role in that, working with many fantastic organisations, our role in that is to leverage the power of business, which was what Elizabeth's great idea originally was. And our vision is for every UK employer to be taking action on domestic abuse. We do that by raising awareness, massively important, and the storytelling that we've heard today is incredibly powerful, as are the really practical suggestions for what business can do. And as people have explained, it does not need to be expensive, but it does need action. So we raise awareness. We also provide some tools that businesses can use, and we convene people, all of you, we convene business to help share what works, also what doesn't work as well as working with many other great organisations who are unfortunately needed at the moment in this space. We recognise that some big business who can really take a lead on all of this, and that's wonderful. But we also recognise there are lots of small businesses who don't have those resources. And so one of the things that we're really focused on is taking the learnings from an event like this, which we will be turning into some practical guidance. And that's what we're going to be doing with everything that we do, is how do we take the learnings and really share them broadly with businesses that may not be able to take those steps themselves and need lifting and shifting, if you see what I mean. So next year we are looking at doing some more detailed deep dives into particular areas for operational leads in businesses, and also we hope to create a foundational programme for maybe smaller businesses who really just need that guidance through how do we get started, how do we get senior leadership input, how do we put in place a policy, and so forth. So watch this space. If you aren't receiving our new Tuesday trios, which are little bite-sized bits of information, please sign up for them. And the next one of these network meetings will be taking place on the 23rd of March next year, in person and online, and we will be focusing on economic abuse. So it leaves me to say, if you've got ideas for us, suggestions as to what we should be doing, things that you'd like us to focus on, please get in touch with me or Catherine or Aisha. We'd love to hear from you, because we are here to support business and to work collaboratively with everyone across the sector. So massive thank you from me. We can be here for another quarter of an hour if you'd like to stay and chat with each other, but thank you so much for coming, and thank you hugely to all of our speakers. That was just amazing.